Welcome back to the high ground with Darth Chocolate. I'm talking to Austin and Travis about the original trilogy. This is part 2 of our video, and I want to thank everyone for joining us and really appreciate your input. Thank you so much. But let's go ahead and jump into Return of the Jedi. I guess I'll jump in first. Man, I loved this movie. You know, as a child, it was my favorite, mostly because it has the best lightsaber duel. I love when Luke gets the high ground, and Vader goes, "Obi-Wan taught you well," and then throws his lightsaber at him. That's just classic comedy.
You don't get the joke until like 2005.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But I love that when the movie starts, we know there's been some gap in time. We don't know how long it's been, and we don't really know what's going on. But Luke walks in wearing all black in a force chokes 2 Gamorrean guards that were just doing their job, you know.
Yeah. Good little piggies.
And
Matrix, Bib Fortuna, yeah.
Also, I maintain Bib Fortuna is the most disgusting looking creature. Like Twi'leks, Twi'leks are I don't know, you know, like Chamson Duo is a handsome man. I'm just saying it, you know, but Bib Fortuna, ooh.
He's like he's a Twi'lek. He lacks.
Overall, I love that even in the final movie of the trilogy, they were still focused on making Star Wars bigger, not smaller.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that irks me to this day is people want the story to get smaller, but Star Wars has always thrived off of having comics and books and all these other things filling the gaps. Like you see these like the Red Royal Guards, you're like, who are they? What do they do? What's that thing they're holding?
Why are they leaving?
You know, I didn't even get to see them in action. But you don't need to. Like that stuff is not. Star Wars is the first story that I experienced in my life that really respected that each individual character in the entire thing has their own story, their own goals and missions. And you know, that random guy sitting in the background has his whole deal, and it's all written out by Lucas already.
Or you just have Quinlan Voss later.
Yeah, and like that's what really makes the universe feel real and lived in. And I know there were a lot of complaints about the Ewoks, you know, cute little Ewoks and stuff, and them taking down the Empire, but for me, even as a kid, I don't know, maybe it's just me having a vivid imagination. I know that the Ewoks look cute because the practical effect is these are little people in costumes. But a bear that size is like 4 to 6 times stronger than a human. Like right off the bat, it'll rip your arm right off.
Yeah.
And if that bear has weapons and is smart enough to build traps, like one of them had a glider.
Right.
That is the most terrifying trap I've ever heard of.
Well, they had the tree trap that kills the walker.
Yeah, not to mention as soon as they capture the heroes,
gone.
As soon as they capture the heroes, right, they put them on sticks and they were going to roast them. Right. This is not the first nor the last time they've tasted human flesh.
They're straight up cannibals.
These guys had not experienced. I know I'm spending a lot of time with Ewoks, but I'm just saying these guys do not know the tyranny of the Empire. When they're celebrating at the end of the movie, they're celebrating the amount of meat that they brought in. Swear to God. Think about it. Think about it.
Oh yeah.
Just saying.
Definitely.
But I'll hand it to Austin first. Return of the Jedi.
I think one of the saddest things that really just like stop. You know what I'm going to say already is when they're at the bunker fight and the Ewok gets shot and his friend is like pushing him over. I was like, oh.
He's like,
it's really sad. Like just
it is really sad.
It is really sad.
It's dark. It's like the Saving Private Ryan of the original trilogy.
And the one that gets stepped on by the walker.
Oh, I know. Yeah. And so yeah, I know. Like I agree. Like you're invested
like toothpaste.
What's that?
It's like a tube of toothpaste.
Oh, that's awful. It's like John's
furry tube.
How would you do that?
Stop it.
Stop it.
When the eyes bulge, like, you see that? No.
Well, if it's Bugs Bunny, then yeah. But I think that, yeah, you're right. When 3PO is educating them about, like, hey, here's our story. Toronto, gosh, like he's describing the walkers and everything. And
need low carbonite.
Right.
Yeah, he has the little, like, the high-pitched breathing. Yeah.
Yeah, the little baby Ewok, like, scared.
They're really scared, yeah, totally. I was just watching a deleted scene of Moff Jerjerrod, who greets Vader in the beginning of the movie, which, by the way, if you don't love the opening of that movie, I don't need to know you. Like, that was such an awesome opening with all the special effects, just how, I mean, it looked better than this picture, That's like, the craft comes in just real slow. Oh, we're honored to have you. Shut up. I'm here to put you back on schedule. That whole scene was super cool. But something I did not know until last week is that that Moff Jerjerrod, number one, stops or tries to, I guess, stop Vader and Luke from coming up to the throne room. Well, no, I knew about that one, but Vader just goes, nah, and then just chokes him, but he doesn't kill him. And Jerjerrod, he's like, yo, hey, like, and there's guards down there too, and I think like other control personnel and stuff like that. But he was like, hey, Emperor told me absolutely nobody, and Vader's like basically like, I'm the exception to the rule, doesn't kill him, and then him and Luke go up. But while the space battle is happening, apparently there's another deleted scene or series of them, small ones, where they know that most of the rebels are on the planet, right? And they're blowing away the space fleet. And they know that the rebels are in the Death Star. So what they do apparently is they find a targeting solution for the Forest Moon. And they're like, hey, if we know that a lot of head honchos and good guys are down there and our shield's already gone, we're going to blow it away, even with our own men on it. And I was like, whew, that would have been way like, I think that would have been really valuable to include in the movie, because then it just really shows you, number one,
what they are, how they feel. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that
ruthless.
Yeah, for sure. Because we don't really see that a whole lot. It was only until recently where everyone's like, oh yeah, I guess the Empire is pretty bad. Because other than that, without the contextual knowledge that we have of Rebels and like the mining stuff that, from the 2015 comic where they're like super brutal and stuff, the Empire does an enormous amount of good for the galaxy. Well, it's like Werner Herzog in Mandalorian. The Empire brings prosperity to everything it touches, He's not wrong, but he's also not right. But that had to have been elaborated on by a lot of other media to show like, okay, actually we need to vilify these guys a little bit more, because they're actually doing some okay things. And then, they start like rounding up citizens and doing Nazi stuff. So that's I think was very interesting. But yeah, it was really cool that like Jerjerrod's also like sweating a bunch. He's like, oh my God, do I do it or don't I? Because they tell him like, hey, we have the solution, what do you want to do? And he can't make up his mind. And then, they destroy the core and the Death Star and everything. But I don't know. I thought those were some really interesting deleted scenes and little trivia and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But love the opening sequence. Vader's suit looks incredible. Obviously the lightsaber fight's great, but I figured I'd touch on that since I knew you guys are going to go over all the super cool stuff.
No, I like that you bring it up. And by the way, I'm not getting paid for this at all, but it makes me want to recommend Lost Stars even more.
Right.
Because it's two characters that joined the Empire for that reason, because the Empire is doing a lot of good in the galaxy, and they want to be proud, right? It's a form of pride for them and their families back home. And as they're rising through the ranks, there's just, a couple things that are just like off, and you're like, okay, that's weird, but whatever. They still do mostly good. And there's a line in the book, and I can't remember it verbatim, so I almost don't want to share it. But they talk about how they will make you, they make you compromise your values once, and after that it gets easier. And after that, they have this veneer, and then they make you cross the line, and then you, at that point, if you did it, you're going to keep doing it. One of their close friends in that book, his name is Nash Windrider. He is.
Are you sure that you just want to say Dash Rendar and get it over with?
Nash Windrider.
He's from Alderaan, and he's on the Death Star when it blows up Alderaan because of the rebels. And it's such like an incredible moment in the book. And what happens is he doubles down for the Empire, and he says, if we lose, if the Empire loses, then everyone I have ever known died for nothing. And it's just like, it's such a powerful book. Read it. It's good.
Well, and that really reminds me too, sorry Travis, is briefly of the Battlefront 2 campaign.
That too.
Because Iden's like, oh man, the Empire was, really standing for something. We were really doing some good out there. Like, there was another comic where Vader's hunting down the Jedi, and I can't remember if Iden's involved in it, but there's some special forces squad that's hunting down the last Jedi, at least on that planet. And the Empire has already built colleges, like they reorganized everything, and like free education and all this stuff, and like they really do a lot of good for this particular planet with how they framed Order 66. They're framing themselves as like, hey, like this rogue crazy person almost killed you and like ran out in the street and brought a fight to you. Are you okay? So like you said, there's a lot of it that's a veneer, but like they still are industrializing a lot of planets in a really positive way. But Battlefront 2 reminds me of that, of like, why are we bombing our own planet? And that's the Emperor just being salty from the grave. It's really just all that is. So, which makes sense for the First Order to be like, hey, what if we didn't do really dumb, weird stuff like that? But that's a whole other topic. But I just wanted to say that too. The Battlefront 2 campaign is another excellent example of how the Empire really just can be super tyrannical and cruel.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. Travis?
Well, building on that point, I was just going to say that, the Empire ultimately is evil, inarguably, because what they're doing, it may seem beneficial for many planets and parts of the galaxy, but what they're doing isn't based on principle. It's based on power gaming. They're just playing a chess game, and the moment it is in their favor to destroy your planet, they will do it. So they have no morality, and they demonstrated that with Alderaan. It's a very peaceful, beautiful planet. And I don't think that, I think all of that goes without saying.
Yeah.
If you're a person who believes that the Empire is good,
plus there's also like Palpatine's vision of like the Yu Zhong Vong and everything, and like why he was making Death Stars and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so but to answer the question about Return of the Jedi.
I have an additional question for you, Travis, too. Okay. So I want you to consider this in your. So, what happened to Leia and Han after Return of the Jedi? There's some canon stuff, but that you probably haven't read it. But ultimately, they didn't end up together in The Force Awakens. So I want you to kind of think about that. I want that at the end of what you're gonna say.
And your question is what happens to them, or what is my opinion on what happens to them?
Your thoughts on what happened?
Oh, okay.
You're
Okay,
the
so
one that's loved and lost a lot. I've seen it. It's been really awkward for me to have been present for some of it.
oh yes,
Specifically, you singing a song to a girl that you didn't want to date. That was awkward for everyone involved.
Okay. So you're saying I'm like the Han of this story.
You also in the beginning mentioned your joy for Han, so that's why I pose it to you. But go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so the Return of the Jedi. This has always been my favorite Star Wars movie, and my appreciation has grown for the other ones. They're all like so minuscule. Like the difference between favorite and not second favorite is like a hairline. But Return of the Jedi captured my imagination as a kid, and not because it was like the Ewoks and they were fun and furry and whatever. Like I didn't care about.
Nope.
I mean, of course, everyone loves the
Unrelated.
Ewoks.
Can I block someone on Zoom?
You're heartless if you don't love the Ewoks, Sorry, I didn't catch that, Austin. What'd you say?
I said unrelated. How do you block someone on Zoom?
How do you block someone on Zoom?
Yeah. Brandon is yubbing. I don't know if it's Skrillex or Ewoks.
It's Ebonics.
I know jive.
But what I'm referring to is actually the beginning of the movie where they, enter Jabba the Hutt and his palace, and there's so much going on there that's new to Star Wars. We've never seen. I mean, when I saw Return of the Jedi for the first time, I saw Jabba the Hutt for the first time. The special editions brought him into A New Hope, but that was a cut scene. So Jabba the Hutt was new, like weird, gross looking, like, and then you have Princess Leia. There's this like sexuality going on. There's a Twi'lek with a see-through shirt. There's a lot of stuff going on there. But the biggest thing for me was the Rancor pit. When you have this girl who's performing for Jabba the Hutt, and she decides to like rebel against him, and boom, he just hits the button, down she goes, and the Rancor has a feast, has another treat. It was like violent and humorous at the same time,
and sexual,
like all these competing things in my mind.
The fun fact about that scene, though, right?
What's that?
Is that the Twi'lek dancer is the same woman. Like when they reshot it, is the same woman. So she did this, when Return of the Jedi came out, and then what was it, 12, 15 years later, she's still a dancer in the same exact shape, and like brought her back.
Wow.
I think that's pretty cool.
I did not know that. That's very interesting. So that it's like, okay, you're gonna do exact same thing you did 15 years ago, except with a shirt on. All right. So, but what's really weird about that is, as a kid, you see things and you interpret them in a way that's like it would seem obvious to an adult or someone with more experience in life, but for me, the way that it's edited you have the Twilight Girl fall down, and then the Rancor eats her, and then right after that, you see Jabba the Hutt having a celebratory treat of his own, and he eats the frog, right? Well, my child brain was like it was like trying to connect everything, and so I in my head, especially because the Twi'lek was green, so I thought like the Rancor ate the Twi'lek, and then there's some sort of like system that we're not seeing that then converts her into a frog, and then it becomes a frog, and then Jabba the Hutt eats the.
Okay. That's enough death sticks for you, Travis. You want to go home and rethink your life.
He's already home. Halfway there.
I'm telling you, that's how I understood it as a child. And
yeah, one thing that actually always stuck out to me is once the Rancor dies to Luke, and that one guard comes in, is just crying. It's just in tears.
Yeah.
They expand on that character in the Aftermath books, and he's someone that raised that Rancor since it was a child and nurtured and fed him and all this stuff. And that person is the Beastmaster for Jabba. And like they expand on that character, and they make you feel bad for him rather than just like, oh, it's some weird fat guy who's crying.
See, now that for me does, I would say that is the one thing I'd probably change is I would have loved if Luke would have used the Force on the Rancor in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I was waiting for that the whole time because
in a way he did. He used the Force to move the rock.
He used his arm to move the rock.
Well, yeah, I was like, I'm pretty sure it's a skull, I think.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He used the Force to target the button.
I'm sure it aided in his accuracy.
I'll give you that. Would not accept argument again. What I mean is, of course, directly using it. Like, I mean, when he's standing before Jabba, first of all, Luke's more like Qui-Gon than anybody in that scene, where he walks up and he's like, all right, you're going to have to do what I say or I kill you. Just like with Watto, where Qui-Gon has absolutely no conscience, and he just goes, yeah, credits are going to do fine. No. Okay, they're going to do fine. No, they're going to do... Like, he's trying to rob this man actively, right? Has no conscience about it, tries it multiple times.
It's like, dude, I run a pick and pull. Come on.
Yeah, right. And so Luke, same thing, he's in front of Jabba, and he's like, well, Jabba, I'm afraid I'm going to have to just really kill you. And Jabba's like, good joke, dude. Luke pulls a gun from the nearest person and just is going to blow his brains out right
He got a shot off, but he was already falling.
Exactly. And then he falls down. And so I was like, at that point, I'm going, okay, there's no, like, they know he's a Jedi at this point. There's no real reason to hide it. I get hiding in the lightsaber. Makes perfect sense. But if he would have, that's the one thing I would have changed. I would have liked to have seen more Force-esque special effects for the Rancor, which I don't know how doable that is, but that is definitely the one thing that I would alter about the original trilogy. Pray I don't alter it any further. That was a great scene, by the way, too, in Empire.
Also, I just want to point out, I mentioned while we were talking about Empire, Luke's personality, the part, nature versus nurture, the part that changes with time versus the parts that stay the same. Luke goes up in the elevator, calm. I'm not going to fight you. I guess I'm going to die here or whatever. He wasn't going to fight them at all. Even when the Emperor is creepily like, you want this. I felt molested just trying to save it. But then the same thing happens that happened in Empire, right? In Empire, he saw his friends in danger, And he's like, nope, I'm out. Let's go right now. Doing this.
Yeah.
It took him out of the, that calm zone. And Return of the Jedi, they're like, well, your friends are going to die. And so what does he do? He screams at the top of his lungs, pulls a lightsaber, and tries to kill him.
That's his gut instinct for everything, is just kill that thing.
And then he's fighting Vader, and then realizes what's going on and stops. I'm done. I'm not gonna try to kill you. And Vader's like, oh, well, what about your sister? And then he goes, no! He screams, and then tries to bludgeon him to death. And it's kind of it's interesting because I'm sure all of us can relate that as we grow, there's certain things that are constant battles all the time. For him, it's his emotional and impetuous nature, and maturity doesn't make it go away. Your maturity makes you able to understand when it comes out and what is a better solution, but it doesn't go away. So I appreciated that.
And you could say that it all rests on his shoulders, but the Jedi, Yoda and Kenobi, their voices are ringing in his head in those moments. So, and it's funny because they contradict themselves. In Empire Strikes Back, they're like, no, don't face Vader. You're not ready. You have don't follow your hatred. But then in Jedi, they're like, well, you have to kill Vader. You have to.
Right. Yeah.
And he's like, I don't think so. I think there's still good in him. And they're like, well, the Empire's already won. And so they're telling him he needs to solve this with violence. And so he's going against that in trying to be peaceful. But then in every moment that you just described where he's saying, well, maybe your sister will have something to say. No! And so he's like, in those moments, he's doing what the Jedi wanted him to do in attacking. So he's just mentally conflicted because he's getting what his heart's telling him versus what the Jedi are telling him versus what his emotions are telling him versus what Vader's telling him and the Emperor. It's like there's 5 different things that he's trying to parse.
Yeah.
And yet, in the end, he makes the right choice by following his heart.
From a certain point of view. And I think that's really the key term is from if each of them are absolutely right in their conviction, and what they've seen in the past leads them to believe that this is what is absolutely right. And I can't fault any person in the entire movie for that, right? I mean, if you essentially raised this kid as Obi-Wan and you saw him murdering other children and everyone,
and not just
you believe he could be saved? Absolutely not. Like I don't know. That's why I love it, the complexity.
Yeah, I have a question for you about the Return of the Jedi. What, for both of you actually, what are your thoughts on the special edition Jabba the Hutt's palace music scene? What I don't know what the terminology for that is, but you know what I'm talking
suicide.
about. Yeah. What's that?
I said suicide. That's the term you're looking for.
Do what I would always do what you got to.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible, but there is something that's worse. Is that character, Cy Snoodles, shows up in Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And would kill him.
But Brandon, the Hutt family's after me.
It's Cy Snoodles and Zero the Hutt, and they both have the same voice. I swear they have to have the same voice actor, but they're such terrible voices and terrible characters, and they kiss, and it's
but that
It's cancer.
it signifies and embodies a
cancer.
facet,
Yes.
a cancerous
Oh.
facet of Star Wars. In every single Star Wars movie, there's something that is ridiculous, that people make fun of, and that even fans who love them to death, like, will just laugh at and like enjoy laughing at it. And I think that's a valid purpose. But for me, like, if you're looking at the original theatrical version versus the special edition version, I think the original is better. It's more entertaining. I mean, it's more acceptable. But when you look at, yeah, I mean, and actually, I've analyzed it as far as genre goes, and the original is more like blues based, or wait, is it the other way around? It's like funk based, the original one, and then the new one is blues. It is.
Sorry, I'm just
like,
thinking
if you break
of,
it down,
of them saying what song, and it's like and then like it just the way that whole scene plays is hilarious to me.
yeah.
But
it's a different vibe between funk and blues, and the special edition one is blues. But what I'm getting at is that it's over the top, and it's really annoying, but it's entertaining to Jabba the Hutt. And that's the whole point of it's actually a story point, that Jabba the Hutt is this
has terrible taste in music.
Insatiable. Yeah, he's an insatiable like, perform for me, and they're performing, they're overperforming because he knows drama. Yeah, they know that if they disappoint him, then they're dead.
Yeah.
And that's like a darkness within that scene. When you're watching, next time you watch that scene, remember that if they don't perform their hearts out, they're dead.
Also, that makes me think of the comedy gold that is, I grew up around here.
So good.
You're going to die here. It's convenient. That's just comedy gold.
That's also another really interesting thing that how, like, Jedi ties everything together, is because he then returns to the planet which he came from.
Mm-hmm.
It's
part of the hero's journey. You return, but you weren't the same.
For sure.
Right.
And I think something else that's, I guess, two other things is, so I did not have the same appreciation for Return of the Jedi when I was a kid, obviously, as I do now, goes without saying. But I talked to different friends of mine who were old enough to see it in theaters, and they didn't actually know what was going to happen with Luke and the Emperor and everything. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's the entire time telling Vader, I'm not going to fight you or whatever. And they're like, yeah, but he's dressed all in black, and he's trying to kill everyone in the movie. So until, he removes that part of his suit, and you see the little white triangle, symbolizing that, like, nope, just kidding, that was just to get me to this point. I thought that was really cool and unique and insightful, and I never understood that until it was explained to me, for sure. And then the other thing is another little bit of trivia, that Lucas, the only reason that the lightsaber is green is because when it was blue, apparently it was harder to see against the backdrop of the sand and the skiff and all of that. So just the blue lightsaber was harder to see. And so they're like, what if we just made it green? And then that, of course, just spawned everything that we know about current lightsaber culture and, stuff like that.
And kyber crystal culture and all this stuff, because his original concept was there was only red and blue.
For sure. And I thought that was really, really cool. And the one thing again that I would probably change about either Jedi or Rise of Skywalker is I wish they would have just let me see someone build their lightsaber. Just please, that's right. Yeah. So like, I think those two things again, because you guys touched on everything else that's really important, but of course we haven't even talked about the Emperor yet, but that little piece of trivia of how that just changed Star Wars for sure. And, like Luke's physical representation of character change, or not change, but like character, true character, when he's up there with the Emperor and, shows the little white triangle and everything and throws his lightsaber away after the fight. I thought those were really cool. And again, like more profound moments that aren't just, well, it's like earlier we were talking about the cave scene of, sure, there's action in it, but there's a lot of subtext in a lot of what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so one thing I am going to come back to you guys, to both of you on, is for wrap up overall, what do you guys feel is the overall message of the original trilogy, or what did you guys get from it when you were little? But before asking you guys that directly, I'll give you a second to think about. I find it very interesting because the Emperor is very much the big bad of the entire trilogy, but he's not the antagonist. I just find that fascinating. Sometimes I hear people say, you shouldn't have to read other media or anything like that to understand what's going on. And it's true to an extent, but the story is very much between Luke and Vader. Very much. It's not about Palpatine. It's not about the Emperor himself.
It's not about who? The person we don't know the name of?
Yeah, I mean, it's an excellent point. Even the name Palpatine was not in the movies. The name Palpatine is in the credits of the special edition, not the original edition, the special edition, and Palpatine is in the novelization of Revenge of the Sith as well.
Yeah.
He didn't have a last name when the movies came out at all, and he didn't have a first name until 2015. 5 years ago. It's been out for 40 years. The Emperor didn't have the name Sheev until 2015. Well, so I just think that's incredible.
The Emperor is to Vader as Obi-Wan and Yoda are to Luke. So they represent the doctrine, the history of the Sith and the Jedi, and the dichotomy, where the evil versus the light is, but the true characters that it focuses on is Luke and Vader.
Yeah, absolutely.
Smaller point.
And then go ahead.
Smaller point of trivia before I forget is, Brandon, I know you'll know this answer, so I'm just going to ask you directly. What mask was Vader's mask based on? What was the inspiration for his mask? I'll give you.
I gotta say, samurai head.
You know it right here. That's all I can tell you. What question would I ask you about ever?
There's no way it's based off of Doctor Doom.
It is. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
Isn't that cool? Yeah.
That is really cool.
That was one of the other things I wanted to bring up before I forgot. I was trying to think of it earlier. I was like, man, I had one more point of trivia. But yeah, Lucas saw that and he's like, ooh, that's a good mask. And you and me, 30 years, 40, 50 years in the future, we're like, yep, we agree. But yeah, that was just another cool thing that I wanted to mention. But yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt.
And then just a couple other, these are kind of random things, but the Millennium Falcon is a very unique ship. I like the face mask. It's a very unique ship, and we've only seen a handful of people fly it. In my opinion, the most impressive pilot has been Lando. In this movie, Lando flies the Millennium Falcon inside of the second Death Star, blows it up, and then back out. You know,
Yeah.
we saw Rey fly it, right? She could barely get it off the ground. She destroyed a bunch of stuff. She flew it through a Star Destroyer that she knows very well.
Mhm.
It was cool, and it reflected her skill level. It just wasn't the most impressive. You know, she's the worst pilot of the Millennium Falcon that we've ever seen, right? We have Han flying it through an asteroid field, which is incredible in and of itself. We also saw the Kessel Run as well in Solo. We have Chewbacca flying it through the crystalline surface of the planet Crate. That's gnarly. But
I will
to me,
argue that Rey is the only pilot not to have lost a satellite dish.
that's true. But yeah, no. In my opinion, Lando, from what we've seen, and it was his ship to begin with. He
Well,
did all
Lando's
the
just
modifications.
better at everything than Han is. Like, just better at everything. Like,
It's true, but
now my question is who is worse, Rey or Poe? Because they've both flown the Falcon.
Ray's worse.
That's it, Poe.
Ray is worse. Yes, when Poe lands, it's on fire, but his
Yeah.
his piloting through the iceberg and the ice comet and stuff was actually pretty impressive. And then figuring out, if depending on the density of the ice, he could just go straight through it, and then the light speed skipping and have to immediately adapt to a new planet's atmosphere, its gravity, its wind, and all this stuff.
Yeah, but he must be
in a Canadian ship.
Physics. Like, there's no way.
And then also, it reminds me of when Lando was piloting it. Its co-pilot was Neum Num, and my little brother, to this day, I make him bust up laughing because at one point, Neum Nub looks at Han and says, "Tahada Mudiada Mudia Amukia, huh?" And my little brother laughs every time I say it, and it's just been a part of our relationship that I've enjoyed.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm sorry. There is one last thing before we wrap up. One of the three of us.
Space battle was, because that was the best space battle that we had ever seen up until that point.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was a trap, but one of the three of us can do a fairly convincing Salacious Crumb.
Not it.
Is that me?
Definitely.
Thank you for that. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up. We're gonna do your guys' overall thoughts on the trilogy, where it ranks as far as trilogies are concerned, as well as what was the overarching message. I guess we will go to Salacious Crumb himself, Salacious B. Crumb.
Oh, I wasn't listening.
Yeah. So the overall, you're asking overall feelings.
Overall feelings, and what was the theme or message? What did you take from it as a kid?
Theme. Well, as George Lucas has repeatedly said, these movies are for 12-year-olds. And I think that's a very good way to put it. A lot of people misunderstand him and think these movies are for children, like 7 or 8-year-old children. But he's talking about people who are about to enter adulthood. about to transition into that time period of life where they have to have responsibility. And so Luke Skywalker, he's about 19, and he's being thrust into a brave new world of responsibility, and it's the hero's journey. And so you have this tale of leaving
Two empires. Oh, sorry.
yeah,
It was the best
leaving,
of times.
It's the worst.
leaving home and pursuing something meaningful that is going to have a greater is going to affect your life, and you're going to be sacrificing yourself in a way for a greater good. And it's a real moral lesson for everyone, because there's the world is greater than us, and everything that we know, the comforts of home are nice, but it's not reality, unfortunately. Reality is grim and dark and requires action. So that's the lesson of Star Wars. The rebellion, they're standing up, they're sacrificing themselves for a greater good to bring down this tyrannical empire. And ultimately, you see this child in Luke become a man, become a warrior and a hero. And he's a hero not because he's a killer, because he's a great warrior, but because he has a great heart.
Wars not make one great.
Exactly.
I can't believe I didn't
Because
even quote that this whole episode.
He's able to see that love transcends over hate, and that and it's a familial message where family is important, and not only that, but humanity is important, and that's a family. That we're all family, and you're only going to be able to save it if we do not fight what we hate, but save what we love. To quote Rustica.
No, I love that. That's actually the reason why I finally chose the name for the podcast, being Higher Ground, the High Ground, sorry. And
not because you wanted to toke a little bit on each podcast. The higher ground.
No, I get it. But because I'm just saying, I was on the fence of leaving the Star Wars community for a second time. I left before because I really enjoyed the prequels and was always ridiculed for it, and seeing a lot of just hate and negativity in it is, I see that right now with the sequels. So that's why I went with the high ground, because that's what I want us to take, and to respect what other people enjoy and what other people like, because we all, if this is Star Wars, to me is a big buffet, right? And you have legends, you have canon, you have comics, you have novels, you have so much stuff that you can take in. You and I spoke the other day where, for me, they have a lot of stuff that's aimed at young girls. The what's it called again?
Forces of Destiny.
Forces of Destiny. And I haven't seen all of them. I've seen some of them. I'm not the target demographic, and that's okay. I'm not gonna hate on them. They're not for me. Why, but hearing that you've watched and enjoyed them, I might check them out again. I don't know, but
yeah, actually,
that's my thing.
That The Force Awakens, where you see BB-8 roll over the sand into the sunset, and and you see that little thing come out of the sand. He's like, "It did that," right? or he said something else, not Ichuda, but
How rude.
Ichuda.
yeah. But
Yo,
that thing
Yo, Tay.
in Forces of Destiny, it goes and it shows that is just like the nose of a like tremors, like some sort of like alien that's like going like through the sand, and there's this like whole ordeal with BB-8. It's pretty cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's familiar to me because a close friend of mine had a baby a couple years back, and I bought him the BB-8 storybook. And that goes over some of that, and like how he ran into Rey and who he runs into like along his journey. And it was really interesting to see that told from a storybook perspective. That was really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was actually a really good book.
All right, well, let's go ahead and turn it over to Austin.
I think that of course Travis covered basically anyone who would quote George Lucas on what they were for, the movies, and like earlier he gave so many addresses, speeches, etc. on like how no, this is good versus evil. It's very binary conflict. I did that on purpose. A lot of it's based on the Bible. It's almost kind of cheating. So I'm going to do my best to phrase it.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily is what he thought of, because to me, I don't know if you guys agree, art is what the viewer beholds, not always necessarily what the artist intended. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm a purist, so that it's tough for me that way, but you're not wrong. I think that just in general, I don't know. Yeah, it's just a really excellently told story. The originals, big asterisk, and but we see the whole universe, the characters. I don't know. Star Wars, while I love it and enjoy it, and I like a lot of parts of it. Love the Force, the concept of Jedi versus Sith, super interesting. The crystal caves, what does that mean? What does a gang on a planet look like? Travis was talking about Jabba the Hutt and this decadent lifestyle. Lots of those more I don't want to say minor, but lots of those maybe less centralized storylines I find interest in, because it's like, oh cool, you get to almost learn about something that's completely different. It's the same but different, which is really cool, because that's what we all want. Like, when a band we love makes music that's like their old stuff, but it's different, you're like, yes, finally, that's the best way I can put seeing something different, like you were saying, either it's like in a comic or it's just enjoying this a piece of the film that's different, like really liking Cloud City and going, okay, well, what's Tabana gas for? P.S. It's for fuel. Oh, they never introduced fuel until 8. Well, if you're paying attention, it's introduced in 5. So the stuff, I guess, I don't know, smaller stuff like that, but the story, of course, of good and evil speaks to me. It's great, of course. I mean, it's like what every like that's some of the greatest stories, like, because you were asking how does it rank among trilogies. Lord of the Rings has a lot of the same themes: good versus evil, oppression versus freedom, etc. So, and of course Star Wars started all that. So I mean, as far as trilogies go, I mean, it's like top ever, of course, top 3 ever or whatever. I would say, honestly, followed really closely by the Captain America trilogy. Let's be real honest. But
respect. I never thought that, but respect.
That's how I feel about it. But a lot of stuff copies the general themes, progress the characters a lot the same way. I mean, shoot, the ILM does all the SFX for all those movies of like Lord of the Rings and Captain America and stuff like that. But I don't know. I like a lot of the EU characters a lot more, with Knights of the Old Republic and everything. But the originals are so awesome to watch because there's also so many good one-liners, how the characters interact. I guess I like kind of more of I guess if I had to put it into a visual, would be like the Olympic rings. If I like these little interactions that are happening, different groups, how do they get involved? Why are we back to this backwater world? Like, I never understood why Tatooine, they kept saying, oh, well, it's this nowhere place. I'm like, it's in every movie for like hours. How could it be such a nowhere place? You know, and then I realized, oh, it's inner rim of Coruscant and all that, mid rim with Corlag and all, you know, Corellia, etc. Then you've got outer rim territories with, you know, just Ilum, Mandalore, you know, all kinds of different planets. And you're like, oh, okay, this really is away from civilization completely. That is strange that all this stuff would be happening there and not where most of the people were, certainly not where like the force sensitive possible people would be, or like the Emperor or Vader or whatever. So I don't know. I think that the universe of Star Wars fascinates me more than the story of the original trilogy.
That's fair, and I would say I absolutely agree. I recently made a TikTok video where I say, as the truth of it, because I love Star Wars, I truly do, but for me, I like the books even more than I like the movies because they expand so much more, and there's so many more of them. It's getting out of hand.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I love overall for me the theme, you know, as a kid, which you know, Lucas was a genius aiming this at that 12-year-old target, is because if you are an adult, you can remember the time before the world makes sense. If you are a child, you want to be at that level, right? It's not a kid show. And if you are that age, then it's the perfect time for you. And I love that it's continued in that. When the prequels came out, they got a lot of hate, but the hate was mostly coming from old people, or not old people, but adult fans that, you know, weren't going through that or couldn't let themselves relate to it.
Plus, the first one was a lot of setup, and they talked about tariffs and taxes, the Senate, you know, and that's not to be clever. Like, the first one was setting up the universe in a huge way off of the books that were, you know, you were telling me about, of how Palpatine's maneuvering himself into power. Like, there's so much unexplained story around one that really the event that we look at in that movie is not like the blockade or the government or anything, which that's part of it, but like it's really the death of Qui-Gon, the reemergence of the Sith, all that. That is like, you know, 75% of it for sure, finding Anakin, all that. So yeah, I mean, while I agree, it also wasn't an easy transition from the other movies, which were really like cool.
Yeah, not at all.
I would argue that you have an equal amount of politics in the original trilogy, and you know, maybe the exposition was a little bit better executed in the original trilogy, but all of that stuff doesn't matter to a kid. You know, what matters is like the cool lightsabers and the funny characters and all the things that happen, and those were all there. For, like, you ask any kid in 1999 and they love the Phantom Menace.
No, but here's the thing though, is, you know, a lot of people who are going to be watching this video are going to be coming from TikTok, and the overall crowd from TikTok is younger, and for all of them, the prequels are the best, and especially if you consider the amount of extra content we got, you know, through the Clone Wars and stuff like that. But I just, what I'm more referring to is how this universe continues to pass the torch. it continues to pass the torch from the 12-year-olds from 1977 to the people who were 12 in 1999 to the people who were 12 in 2015. You know, and I think this. I love it, and I hope they continue the same pattern. I'll still be here, hopefully, maybe. And when new stuff comes out, I'll be able to say hello there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that is to come, and that we have not even fathomed. You know, there's a lot to. I mean, it's a lot of the rumors that I'm hearing. Who knows what's true? But
I do.
It's pretty interesting.
But okay, so at that point, why don't we go ahead and close it out?
But the last thing, at least for me, is to quote our favorite Melee player. There's still a lot of Melee left to play.
Yeah.
And Melee's been out for 20 years, you know, and Mango's like, no, there's a lot of Melee left to play still. And I agree with you, Travis. There's a lot more to do.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the original trilogy started 1977, right? When did Rebels come out? And it's adding to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mandalorian's out. It's adding to it.
Yes.
Rogue One came out. I tried to erase it from my memory.
And on that note, we could go ahead and jump off. Where, if anywhere, can we find you, handsome gentlemen?
Myself, you can find me at The Time Trav on Instagram and YouTube. I have a channel, don't really do much with it, so I won't even bother telling you what it is. Just search Tool Spider-Man, and you might get one of my videos.
Oh, okay. And Austin?
Really just, I mean, anytime that you'll have me, but, you know, on the show here, that's probably going to be the closest thing, either with comics or anything like that, Audible Comics, or on your show. But yeah, I'm really working on just a lot of projects that are not social media related currently.
Well, if anyone is into gaming and things at all, there will be some announcements coming soon. So it'll be exciting when you can talk about it. I know about it. So
no, for sure. Yeah, it's just a small work in progress, but basically myself and another friend are developing, honestly, a revolutionary tournament schedule, platform, everything. And yeah, we hope it's going to change a lot of how people play games and how people value their own participation, you know? So we're looking to make tournament gaming really fun and really accessible. So that's basically what I'm putting my energy into now. And so, yeah, basically whenever you have me on the show, which is super fun, it was great to meet you, Travis, and, you know, get to chat with you more, of course. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
all right. And as always, I am Darth Chocolate, Darth Choco on TikTok, and my link tree will be here. I'll also add a link to Travis's Instagram. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me. It's been a fun conversation. I'll probably break it up into 2 videos, but I appreciate having you guys on. Love you very much.
Yeah.
And may the force be with you.
Hello there.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, in the words of Captain America, you know, I could do this all day.